Jesse, welcome to the Soccer Queens podcast again.
Erica, it is so phenomenal to be here. Thanks for having me. What a pleasure it is.
Thank you so much for coming on. And I couldn't have thought of a better person to speak to today because I keep getting questions. Can you do a goalkeeper specific podcast? And I was like, yes, that's a brilliant idea because I haven't done that yet in the 3 years I've been doing this. So here we are, and we're going to get right into it shortly. But Jesse, why don't you just give a background on your playing career and then what you're doing today, which is super awesome.
Yeah. Well, 3 years it took you to get a goalkeeper on, Erica. I thought we were going to be on, like, I thought we should be the first guest, but regardless, yeah, I played at a small Division 3 school. It's called Centenary University. It's out in Hackettstown, New Jersey. So it's a very small school. Played there for 4 years, and then once I graduated there, I started coaching there. So that's where I initially started coaching, and then so while I was working in New Jersey, I guess this is probably while I was coaching, I was moving back and forth. And if for any coaches who know that working at a small Division 3 school, you probably need to do some other things to support yourself. So I was also working at a sports facility called Athletic Republic. And while there, I just started kind of getting into and trying to figure out what exactly it is I wanted to do, whether I wanted to coach or do some strength, go in the strength conditioning route. And while I was a goalkeeper coach, I kind of just tried combining the two. So it was probably around 2019 when I started saying, like, hey, goalkeepers, we're just different athletes. Like, we play the same sport, but we're different athletes. So from there, I just tried to do a little bit more research into how people are training the position and what it looks like, and really just try to figure out and hone in on what are the movements that goalkeepers make in a game, how much ground are we covering, and then from there I just tried combining the two, and now it's played a little bit of a factor into how I train goalkeepers today. But that's kind of the background of the long story short of how I kind of got started in coaching and trying to figure out how to maximize the goalkeeper's performance.
And where are you currently coaching?
Oh, that's right. Currently at the University of Pittsburgh on the women's side.
Yeah, minor detail there. And
Minor
you were
detail.
just named
What's up?
Staff of the Year in the ACC.
I think it was like the Atlantic Region, United Soccer Coaches Atlantic Region Staff of the Year. So very humbling. I didn't think that me kicking balls could help play kicking balls at goalkeepers, that is, could help play a factor into that. But it's a pretty cool honor.
So you work with the goalkeepers at Pitt, but you are also a full-time assistant coach.
Correct.
Right. So, man, that is awesome. And congrats again on that award and such an amazing season. And I mean, super record breaking for the program. And I'm sure a lot of people are curious about what you look for in goalkeepers, but we'll get to that soon for the recruiting part. But you mentioned something there about making sure goalkeepers do performance training. And I want you to get into some of the physical qualities that goalkeepers should be training for in the weight room and on the field.
Yeah, I think when you look at the position, a lot more is going to be explosive based. So less running for distance and probably more sprinting than anything. So there, and then we're really just probably trying to figure out how to maximize force output. Um, and I think that right there is what you should be probably focusing on more rather than running 2 miles, lifting 10 to 12 reps of whatever movement in the weight room. But I think if we can, because when you look at it, and I think there was a study done too that I saw, probably it was like the third or fourth division in Italy, I want to say, about goalkeepers' movements and how much ground they're covering. And at that level, they were covering probably around 2 miles a game. And a lot of that 2 miles was them just kind of walking in and around their 18. And then they looked at how many sprints they were doing per game. And most of the sprints were short action sprints. So right around the 10-meter marks. And then I think the next one was probably obviously maybe 15 to 20. And then there were a very minimal one. It was probably all game dependent of something over a 20-meter or 20-yard sprint. So when I saw that, it was kind of eye opening too. And I don't think you kind of think about it, but it might not always click. But I think that right there is probably the the biggest thing that we need to focus on in the weight room is just short, explosive actions, especially when. And I think you could probably watch some film of your game and have a look and be like, okay, what am I actually doing? How many different movements am I making throughout the game, and what are they? And I think you'd see too. It's like you're not really diving that much either. It might be a couple easy dives, but obviously it's all game dependent and how your team is, and if you're on a worse team and you're getting peppered with shots, it looks different. But generally speaking, I think especially at this level, we're looking at a couple quick explosive actions per game, not covering that much ground at a higher speed, if that makes sense.
Those are super interesting stats. I didn't know that they covered on average 2 miles of
Yeah.
ground, but it does make a lot of sense when they're just kind of like walking and pacing around their box. And then, of course, if it's a harder game against a harder offense, they might be making more
Mm-hmm.
of those sprints. And those are the actions that are the most game changing and where the most goal scoring happens.
Right.
And I really think in the past, and I hope we've moved away from this, but goalkeepers used to kind of be lumped with the team in the conditioning that they need to run like the 1 mile and 2 mile tests and do all this endurance. So, like,
Right.
why is that not ideal for goalkeepers?
Well, I'm no sports scientist any really, but it's like the old expression: train slow, get slow; train fast, be fast. I think, and we want to be fast, right? We want to be some of probably the very fast, twitchy athletes on the field. So anything training endurance wise just doesn't really support the position. Now, I think it is important to have that foundation and that base of being able to do the things some field players do. But you know, I know some field players are running 5, 6, 7 miles to train for the year. But when you look at how much ground field players are covering, they're covering 7 to 10 miles in a game. So yeah, they need to be able to withstand that. But when you look at goalkeepers again, you're just not doing it. So why not train like you would in the game? Now, I will say this too, and it's something interesting because the position and the demands of the goalkeeper requires you to constantly communicate. That does take a lot of oxygen and breathing away from the brain, and so I think having that aerobic foundation is probably going to be good for you, just so you have that stamina to be able to talk through later game stages, especially if you're sprinting late and then trying to communicate. I think that's all going to play a factor. But I think generally speaking, um, you know, or running at slow speeds for a longer distance just doesn't help you. It doesn't necessarily hurt you, but if you're doing it more than you are doing probably more of the explosive side of things, um, I just think that that'll limit some progress.
It's always so interesting. It seems like there's kind of this stereotype that goalkeepers aren't as fit as the field players, but they should be just as fit, if not more, and the
It-
most strong, powerful, and beasts on the field. And this reminds me of a goalkeeper I worked with, and she was beating all of my field players in our sprints and our acceleration work. And
mhm.
they were just shocked. They're like, "Oh, how's a goalkeeper beating us?" And I'm like, "Because she should be
Right,
explosive. Like she
right,
should be up there with the
100%.
rest of you guys." So in terms of like the goalkeepers on the Pitt women's soccer team, how do they train? What types of movements are in their program and like what are some of their strengths?
Yeah, I think they're all very, very strong goalkeepers. So they're all probably some of the. We have three of them, so the three of them. We have a sophomore and two freshmen. So I'll say actually mostly the sophomore, just because she's been in with the team lifting for probably 2 years now because she came in early. Whereas the others are probably catching up to more of a foundation. But you're probably looking at some of the stronger athletes. Now we do have some freak field player athletes that are very, very fast. So I can't say that they're the fastest on the team, but um, yeah, I think when you look at the goalkeepers, though, they should be the best athletes. Plus, you want to be able to kind of have those bragging rights on the team. So that's just me. I always like being the best athlete because I can kind of rub into the fact that when I beat the field players in fitness tests, I could talk smack to them. But I'm a little different in that setting. But no, I mean I think yeah, in the weight room you're looking at probably they're doing some trap bar deadlifts, some depth jumps, glute bridges, Nordics. just kind of reading off of what they're doing. Some band assisted push ups, dumbbell squat jumps, band assisted jumps. So, and when I'm talking about these exercises, they're not doing them for 10 to 12 reps. They're nothing is exceeding 6 repetitions, and that includes the bench press. So, if I'm not mistaken, you're kind of working that fast twitch muscle side at lower than 6, and you're not really focused on the muscular endurance. Anything after that's more the muscular endurance, but you're trying to get them a little bit twitchy. So you're working on strength and explosiveness. So that's what some of their stuff in the weight room looks like. We have a very good strength and conditioning coach too, Brenna, who understands that goalkeepers are different, and this plan is just for them, and the field players do their own thing. Um, and I made sure too, like right away, listen, we got to do something a little bit different, and even some of the speed and agility stuff that she'll do with the team in the springtime. The goalkeepers are gonna do. We're gonna work together too, and have something a little bit different with the goalkeepers, just so again the movements, that conditioning piece of it is just so much different. So that's kind of a very broad breakdown of what it looks like in the weight room for them.
I like that. So a lot of explosive work, a lot of total body, especially upper body
Yep. Yeah.
strength, and then the few of the exercises you named there, a lot of hamstrings involved. So the Nordics, the deadlifts, like really
Hmm.
helpful with that acceleration and that vertical jumping power for
Yeah.
goalkeepers. And yeah, I think this is super helpful because I still find even at the youth level, a lot of young girls goalkeepers are not getting in the weight room even when they're in high school, and it's really catastrophic because they could really be improving those explosive actions even more. So I
And
can't repeat enough to the listeners that this
yeah.
is important, and that kind of segues to the recruiting aspect. So
Well, can I touch on one more thing too before we go
yeah.
into recruiting?
Yep.
And the other thing too, I think for high school club players, especially goalkeepers, if soccer is your only sport, which I'm sure you've talked about this too, it probably shouldn't be, especially as a goalkeeper. You should be playing other sports to a degree, to an extent. But if soccer is your only sport, there's no problem with that. But think about the demands that are asked of you in practice, and if you don't have a goalie coach, and even if you do, but I know that most high schools probably won't have the luxury to have a goalkeeper coach. So if your demands in training aren't high, which they might not be if maybe you have a 30-minute session and then you go to play, and then you might scrimmage, play 7v7. If you feel your demands aren't high, you can probably lift during the season, because our goalkeepers will lift another day during the season. Our field players will lift once a week, but I try to get our goalkeepers in there 2 or 3 times, especially if it's a 2 and a 3 and they're not playing as much on game days. I don't think our player loads, and now granted we have the luxury to track all this, and we have all that data, but still our player loads are much lower than an actual field player. So you can kind of slowly or get back into the gym and probably work and tax the body a little bit more just to keep those player loads high. And I think it's just not as straining training days than some field players. So
I'm glad you brought that up. That is super important that we can increase the volume and training frequency in the weight room with the keepers a lot. And yeah, very important message for youth because it is a non-negotiable if they want to play at this level, D1, ACC, they have to be getting stronger and more explosive. Now, let's talk about recruiting
mhm,
and just what are some specifics you look for in goalkeepers at this level?
yeah. So I would say the first thing is probably like how do you move, right? So when I'm watching a goalkeeper and I'm watching their warm up, I'm like, are they moving proper? Like, and it's probably tough to explain, but I think how kind of when someone's moving laterally and forward and back and they're changing direction, it looks a little bit smooth, and some look a little bit funky doing it. And I'm sure you've seen it all the time. So it's like, do you just look essentially like an athlete when you're moving side to side, front and back, a lot of change of direction. So that's probably number one, is like, do you just look comfortable in the goal? Um, and then number two, and I think this is where it might vary. Um, so Randy and I work together. So a lot of what I like as a goalkeeper still needs to fit what Randy likes in a goalkeeper. So this is probably more. Do you want to get to a more technical side? Is that what we're doing, or are we still more working on the athlete side? Which one?
Yeah, let's talk about the athlete side
Yeah,
first and then the technical side.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So again, change of direction. How comfortable are you moving left and right? Um, and then obviously we're going to look at the explosiveness in the air. Are you comfortable? Can you time balls in the air? Because crossing in the women's game, and especially for us, is a very very big piece. So it's, are you explosive getting off the ground? Can you jump up and go catch a high ball? And I think that's probably the second most important, but obviously the first to move. And then how quickly can you get up off the ground? I think that's a very underrated piece. Um, is just how quickly, once you make a diving save, can you get back up? And goalkeepers at every age, every gender. I mean, we all it's something very very difficult to do when you put full force into diving and then getting back up to get your feet set. I think that's an underrated piece, and I think it does take a lot of core strength too as well, just to be able to get down and up as quick as possible. But those are probably the three from like a athletic movement side that I'm always watching for.
And how about the technical side?
Yeah, from the technical side, I think um, every coach is going to be a little bit different, but for us here, it's, there are three big things. It's shot stopping, crosses, and distribution. Now, those are very broad and can be broken down. Um, I think at this level, every goalkeeper is going to be a good shot stopper. So when I look at shot stopping, the first thing I say is how often are you holding the shots? Is how your hands, right? So um, it's great to be a good shot stopper, but if you're constantly giving up rebounds, then for me that's a pretty big pet peeve of mine. Now, listen, I understand we're not going to catch everything, we're not perfect, but the more I see you hold, the happier I'll be, or the more. And I think coaches can tell too if you're trying to hold, or versus if you're trying to parry. So even if I see you drop a ball, but I see you're trying to hold it, for me that's a big positive. But just because I know with repetition and time and confidence, those little drops will be eventually become catches. So for me, that's a big positive. Crosses again are huge, and just timing. Are you comfortable going up to get the ball in front of crowd or in crowds, going up over defenders and attackers' heads to go and get it? So um, crossing, just any sorts of low ball, line drives, high balls, whatever it may be, but any types of crosses, and just kind of reacting to headers. But and then lastly, distribution. We want goalkeepers that are able to play with their feet, play out of the back. We do want to build from the back within reason. So last but surely, are you just comfortable kicking the ball, striking the ball with both feet? So that's probably the brief rundown from a technical standpoint. And again, very broad subjects that can all be broken down into a lot more detail, but generally it's those big three.
So my last question is, if a goalkeeper is putting together a recruiting video, what are some of the highlights you want to see in that video?
Yeah. Um, Probably, I mean, you want to include everything. I think even to take it one step further, instead of really just making one video, I always like to see YouTube channels. So when girls are creating their own YouTube channels, I think it makes it easier for them too to say, hey, okay, you can just put a distribution video, or you could just put a. Now, granted, you could put them all together too. There's nothing wrong with that, but at least for example, there were just two big ECNL and GA events that just happened over the weekend. Then you can post, okay, here's my ECNL highlights, here's my GA highlights, and then here's my training highlights. And so you can post multiple videos onto your YouTube channel that coaches can go through. But if we're just talking one video, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at how many shots are you holding? Are you trying to hold them, or is it just shot stopping? You're just parrying the ball, and you could be making great saves, and that's great. But again, for me, I might not. That might kind of just be, you're good, but not really what I'm looking for. Definitely want to include some crossing, making sure that you're comfortable in the air, and then distribution at the end if you have it. For me, I've seen a couple video or a handful of videos where girls just put like a minute of punting. You don't need to do that. Just if you can, some schools like it. I mean, if you can punt the ball, put two video clips of you punting the ball relatively far. That's enough. There's doesn't have to be anything more. Um, you don't need to put a minute of you passing the ball 8 yards to your center back. A couple clips of that will be fine. Generally, we would expect for you at that level, trying to play at this level, you're going to be able to complete an 8 yard pass to a center back, but don't kind of fill your video up with that. Um, Fill it up with your shot stopping, your ability in the air, um, and just really any of the more saves. Because I think for most coaches, shot stopping is going to be step one, making sure you're a good shot stopper. So you want to be able to at least complete step one before you get to step two and three. And for me, I think distribution is probably step three as well. Like shot stopping step one, crossing step 1A, and then great if you complete the trifecta, even better. But I think distribution too is a learned skill. So that's kind of where I would kind of rank my video preference. But that's just me.
No, I think that was super helpful, and I'm so glad you came on, and 3 years later, we finally got a goalkeeper
Yeah.
episode. So if anyone wants to follow up with Jesse, please look in the description below. I'll include his social media link so you can reach out, and I'm sure a lot of people have questions, and Jesse will be willing to answer all of those. So thank you again, Jesse, and I'll see everyone on the next episode.
Awesome. Thanks, Erica.